Hey humans, it's Hannah. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, we do videos on creepy and disturbing things here, and today we are going to dive in and explore a very mysterious and very disturbing Reddit account. The Reddit account in question is user Lady Iris, but went by other names as well. This account and the other accounts that she had would have dozens and dozens, possibly hundreds altogether, posts about their fantasies for harming others. She would go extremely in depth. She would want others to go extremely in depth. She tried to minimalize. She tried to justify harmful acts and was so specific and persistent in her posts and replies, regardless of how many times she would get banned from different Reddits or from Reddit altogether, that most people, including myself, believe that this is 100% a real person and not something fake, not a troll. And by the end of the video, you will understand why that is my opinion. We have something extremely important to talk about real quick before we get into it, but I'll be right back. Today's video topic is a perfect reminder to everyone that there are terrifying people in the darkest corners of the internet. The Reddit account that we're talking about today is a real person. She is a perfect example of, while most people in the world are good and kind, we have to remember and be aware that there are scary people out there that do not want what's best for us. All you have to do to prove my point is Google your own name, which I have done and I do on a pretty regular basis. And then you will understand the feeling of just how shocking and scary it is to find information that you didn't remember giving to anybody, never consented to be published online, just out in the open, public records, anybody in the world can see it. Does that sound illegal? Yes. Is it? No, they are required to remove it if you ask them to, but they make it intentionally difficult and confusing, and they know that you probably won't bother. They make billions of dollars selling your info to scammers, but also like criminals, like anybody with nefarious intentions. If you want to stick it to these data brokers and also just fight back, then I highly recommend today's sponsor, which is Aura. The reason I love Aura is because it is everything for online security, all in one tiny, neat, little cute package. They automatically remove all this info from these weird websites on your behalf. Aura is better than any other online security tool out there because, unlike others, they will make sure that every virtual door is completely locked. You get alerts on the app if any of your info has been leaked on the dark web. There's 24/7 monitoring. There's around-the-clock US-based support, real-time fraud alerts for your credit and your banking. They're covered with $5 million of identity theft insurance in case something does happen to go awry. They also have a built-in password manager. They have parental controls. They have credit monitoring. They have a VPN. They have a built-in antivirus and so much more. Do not leave your security to chance. This is something we should all be taking extremely seriously. If you want to try Aura today for 14 days for free, you can go to my link, which will be clickable right below this video at the top of the description, right there, or it's on the screen, or the QR code, and that is aura.com/HannahTheHorrible. Aura.com/HannahTheHorrible for your 14-day free trial. I have one more quick disclaimer, and that is, as you guys know, YouTube is very, very sensitive. She's a sensitive girl about things that creators are allowed to say and not say. So for the interest of trying to not get flagged, I am going to have to censor a couple words in this video. Mostly this word, I'm going to just say M word, and this word, I'm going to just say T word. I'm saying that instead of unalive because while I understand why people use unalive instead, it drives me nuts personally. So I'm going to say M word instead. Anything else I censor in this video, I'll make sure to have text on screen so that you know what we're talking about. Okay, like I said, Lady Iris, as far as we know, is a woman. And they have had other accounts, but unfortunately, we can't really dive deep into the other accounts because they've been banned, or at least Reddit says they've been suspended. I can't find them in the Wayback Machine. I'm either doing it wrong or it's not there, but it doesn't really matter, trust me, because Lady Iris is the main account. Lady Iris is what people, when they're referring to this this Reddit case, they refer to it as the Lady Iris case. And it doesn't really matter because pretty much, as you'll discover, all the posts that she posts are more or less the same. The first post on the Lady Iris account was on August 25th, 2015, and she posted in the subreddit AWW, like, oh, that's so cute. Quote, adorable half blue heeler, half Australian Shepherd puppies. And it was accompanied by a link to show a photo that I assume was of the puppies, and that photo doesn't seem to exist anymore. No one commented on this post, and obviously it is not that concerning. The next day, on August 26th, 2015, Lady Iris posts on the subreddit Ask Reddit. She says, why is it that the more we're told not to do something, the more we want to do it? Again, this post did not blow up or anything. It only has 6 comments. And yet again, this post is pretty innocent. Nobody knew that this was the Reddit user posting on these other banned accounts yet, because that's a very innocent post. But then her third post on October 27th, the following day, that's where things start to get odd, and they would only get darker and darker and darker. To be fair to Lady Iris, she did post this in r/morbid questions, so it was appropriate to post there. She wasn't posting it in lighthearted subreddits. It was meant to be dark questions like this. And she posted, if you forced someone to swallow Drano, what would happen to their insides? She goes on to write, obviously, it would most likely kill them, but I'm curious to hear the details on how it would actually corrode their insides and what it would feel like. Yet again, there's no evidence that this user is concerning overall, and there's no evidence that this person had other accounts that were already banned. So again, nobody seemed too concerned. And honestly, if it were me coming across this post organically, I wouldn't have been concerned either. It's, again, just kind of a morbid question, but we've all had morbid thoughts before, right? And it does make sense that if you had innocent intentions overall, you didn't actually want to harm anybody, or you weren't having dark thoughts, this might be a question somebody would naturally be curious about. A couple days later, on August 29th, Lady Iris posts, quote, what are the best ways to cause extreme harm to people that won't instantly cause their death? Now, this is the second post in a row, again, granted in morbid questions, but this one does raise a tiny bit of a red flag. Why do you want to know this? What pleasure do you get out of people answering this question specifically? Most of the comments on this post took it seriously and answered her question and went into pretty graphic details, so graphic that I'm probably not going to include them on YouTube. But after all, it's all hypothetical. Why wouldn't people answer this question in a subreddit devoted to morbid questions? But I did want to highlight this post because the comment section got a little interesting, at least in one thread. So someone said, oh look, it's you/Allegreta's new account. Allegreta is an account that was suspended. We can no longer see it. And sure enough, that is one of Lady Iris's alt accounts. I believe the original account, if not one of the original accounts. Lady Iris responds, I will neither confirm nor deny that. But then she had to go back and edit it because people were accusing her of being Allegreta, and she said, edit, Jesus people, before you downvote me to oblivion, I was making a joke. It's pretty obvious that I'm that user. So here, Lady Iris is confirming that she is in fact also Allegreta. Before she edited the comment admitting to be the same user, somebody else responded, yeah, you are though. The account was created right around when you asked if you were shadow banned, and you post on r/name-nerds, a pretty small subreddit that Allegreta posted on quite frequently, not to mention the dark stuff typical of Allegreta on this account. And she said, yeah, I know, it's not that hard to figure out, but I'd like to avoid having this account shadow banned for at least another couple days. So this is why I'm reading you this part of it, even though it seems mundane, because she is explaining how this account came to be. So somebody said, I don't think you should have been shadow banned at all. It's obviously allowed for you to ask these kind of questions since morbid questions is a subreddit. Are they saying that you're allowed as long as you aren't too into it? I don't get it. Valid question, honestly. Like, you should not be banned from a subreddit where you're just literally doing what the subreddit was made to do. So I do understand that. Lady Iris said, well, definitely. It isn't right for me to be banned for posting morbid questions in a subreddit dedicated to morbid questions. But I also posted in r/ask Reddit, and the mods there considered it spam or trolling, even though that was not my intention. I simply wanted open-ended answers about dark topics in a large sub. Somebody asked, what was the question? And Lady Iris, this is very telling in my opinion. Lady Iris said, oh, it wasn't just one question. I asked many, many questions centered around my interest in T-wording and M-wording. Innocent people for pleasure. So what does this tell us? This tells us this is not the first time she's gotten in trouble with Reddit and or mods of specific subreddits. This also tells us that she's aware that she does spam subreddits. She says, I asked many, many questions centered around my interest, which that is spamming. That is what a mod would consider spamming. So it is frustrating from the outside to see her that I shouldn't get shadow banned for following the rules, but then literally two lines down says, but I did do this against the rules. It seems like where she got in trouble was because she kept asking it on Ask Reddit instead of morbid questions, because Ask Reddit was a bigger forum and she was hoping for a wider variety of answers and more specific answers, because she does have a fixation on people describing in detail what they would or wouldn't do in response to her questions. And then that last part of that comment is just, we can't skirt over that. That's a wild thing to say out loud. My interest in T-wording and M-wording innocent people for pleasure, not my interest with true crime, not my fascination with M-word, not my morbid curiosity for gore, my interest in doing those things to innocent people for pleasure. So that's Lady Iris's first few posts. We're off to a tremendous start, aren't we? There's a ton of posts. There are, I think, at least 100 posts over just a few months on this account. So obviously I'm not going to go deep dive every single post because this video would be 5 hours long. And we don't really need to, because you just need to get the idea of what we're dealing with here, which you will. So what I'm going to do is read off the titles of a bunch of different posts that I thought were interesting and highlighted her thought process and everything. And then we're going to, again, deep dive a few more of the posts that I found the most telling. I was going to say relevant, but I think the word I'm looking for is telling. So here's some posts. How long does it take for a person's nerves to be destroyed when they are burned alive? How long are you likely to feel pain of burning? If you could kill any one person in existence with absolutely no repercussions, who would it be and how would you K-word them? Would you make it slow and painful or a quick death? Why don't we make use of the flesh and meat of people that die prematurely? If you could T-word any one person in the world with no chance of punishment, what would you do to them? By the way, when somebody answered cheekily to this post that said I would T-word them, Lady Iris responded to that, quote, I want specifics. So remember how we were talking about earlier, how she doesn't just want to find like-minded people. She wants people to describe in depth what they would do. And when people do describe in depth, like a step-by-step what they would do and describe things, like she definitely wants things in a descriptive manner of what happens to the person, what they do when they're in pain, how they would be T-worded and stuff. And so this is a pattern of, I want specifics. And then when she does get specific, she's like, this is a great answer. Thank you so much. Which is very concerning in itself. Okay. What are some of the best places to shoot someone if you don't want them to die instantly? If M-word were legal, who would be on your list? What is the cruelest way you've manipulated someone? What are some clever ways to get away with M word. Why are some people unable to accept that some people like watching and making others suffer and aren't trolling when they admit it? Why does success taste even sweeter when you have to stomp on others to get it? Why is it that the more evil and cruel an action is, the more exciting it becomes to carry it out? Why do people get so much more upset over the death of children than adults? Why does it feel so good to see people in great physical pain? If I K-worded one of your loved ones, how would you like to see me punished? So, yeah. Hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea. And like I said, I'm not going to read all the posts because a lot of them are variations of those. So let's dig a little deeper into a few of the posts I didn't read off, though, that I did think were notable. So one of them, why is there no link to a homicide hotline on the sidebar of this sub? Again, this is posted in r/morbid questions. Somebody at the top comment, though, shout out to them, because the top comment is, because the homicide hotline is 911? Slay. Lady Iris replies to that and says, no, I mean a hotline that you can talk to someone if you feel like you want to K-word someone and need someone to listen and help you cope with your feelings. Someone else said, try anger management. And Lady Iris replied to that, it's not about anger, it's about sadistic urge. And a lot of people have kind of almost sympathy for Lady Iris too, though, because it's clear that she's struggling with this, but doesn't actually want to act on it, which we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But she's asking, why isn't there a hotline, just like the crisis line for people who, you know, are having thoughts about themselves? Why isn't there one for people that have thoughts about other people? Which, fair enough. And I do understand, like, you're trying to prevent yourself from doing those things. And so why are people scrutinizing you for it? And then you're going to get possibly thrown in jail for saying these things out loud, you know? And then, but that's like, doesn't really seem fair to get punished for something, for thoughts that you're having when you're trying not to act on them and you want help. I do understand that. It's just that these posts get worse, and it's very clear that she does not seek help. And she even says, it's not about anger, it's a sadistic urge. And she has self-labeled herself as a sadist many times. So it really is like her fantasizing about the harm of others. The next post that I want to highlight is this one. Why, in your own words, is M-wording an innocent person morally wrong? And the top comment says, because you have no right to choose whether they live or die. Lady Iris replies, why not? We make that choice for animals all the time. This is a philosophical question that many people have asked. There's a complicated answer, especially because the answer changes based on whether you are religious or not, based on whether you're vegan or not, but that's kind of the whole point. So everybody get ready, sit down, grab a snack, grab a drink, get ready for a little rant, because this is my take on this, because I do understand what she's asking. Like, it sounds like it's obvious, like, don't harm others, but when you really think about it philosophically, it is a confusing question to some. Like, why really, not just like, is society telling us that it's wrong, but why is it really wrong? And notably, she compares it to killing an animal, and how, why is it okay to kill an animal, but why is it not okay to kill a human? Now, ready? Okay, that's a false statement. She is wrong there. She said, why is it not considered immoral to kill an animal? It is considered immoral to kill an animal for pleasure and for no reason. I think most people would agree that poaching for aesthetic reasons, to get aesthetic materials for man-made goods from that animal, is immoral. I think that most people would agree that killing an animal for fun because you want to see what it's like to kill something or someone is wrong. You're doing it for your own satisfaction and you're doing it for no reason. She is making it seem like killing animals under any circumstance is the exact same thing as her doing it for sadistic reasons. And a lot of people would argue that it's not. So this is where the nuance comes in. Animals are also seen by many people as food. Are there problems with our meat industry? Of course, I don't think anybody disagrees with that. But a lot of people do not find it morally wrong to kill animals if we're using them for our food and we are consuming them, because that is seen as health and survival. I know that vegans and vegetarians would argue that that is still not a good reason, and that's completely fair for them to believe that. Not everybody believes that eating animals for food is justifiable, but many people do, which is why that topic is granted subjective. It's not objective, it's subjective, because so many people are on different sides. Some people find it morally wrong, some people don't find it morally wrong. Now, I think you could argue that the vast majority of people, it is objectively rather than subjective, but it is objectively bad and wrong to kill an animal for no reason or for your sick pleasure. The intention behind it is different. When it's from a hypothetical future serial killer, it's almost black and white. Almost nobody would say, yeah, that's totally fine. Now, to apply that to taking another human's life. Again, Lady Iris is grouping this all in one big ball, that taking somebody's life when it was not a natural cause in all cases is the same thing. And that is just not true either. There are some situations that there's this magical word that we like to call an accident. So imagine somebody is jaywalking at 3 a.m. It's completely pitch black out. There is nobody on the road, and they decide to jaywalk across a extremely busy intersection or across a highway. Maybe this pedestrian is even drunk. Either way, they are breaking the law by jaywalking, and they also cannot reasonably expect on the highway for a car to know that they would be there in the dark, in the middle of the night, in the middle of somewhere where there is not pedestrians. So if that vehicle hits the jaywalker, typically, again, not always, but typically in court, they are found not liable, or it is an accidental homicide, or it's manslaughter. You know, that situation is completely different than Ted Bundy going out to hunt a woman specifically to T-word SA her and M-word her for his own sick pleasure. Those cannot be compared. The results are the same in terms of loss of life. One person dies in both scenarios, but I don't think anybody in the world would argue that the driver of that car is just as evil as Ted Bundy. Same thing if there's an intruder in your home and they are trying to SA you, if you had a weapon on hand, you are within your right to defend yourself. And if you end up killing them, you are hopefully not going to be held liable for that, because you can claim self-defense. So that's the same for animals. A lot of people see animals for the purpose of food as an okay thing, but they do not feel the same way about just torturing an animal needlessly. So all I mean to say there is that Lady Iris's argument is just dumb. Equating that, oh, we choose when we take an animal's life, it's a complete moral philosophical debate that is not as simple as what she's making it out to seem. So moving on from that, another person said they are a human being and you cannot force them to die. Lady Iris replies to this, well, you technically can. What makes them any different than killing an animal? That same freaking argument. There is really no difference other than the fact that we are human, and so we have stigmatized killing our own kind. But I need a deeper reason than that. Is it truly morally wrong, or is it more of a fact that we need to keep our species alive? Okay, so I already addressed the dumb animal argument, but let me address why I know I didn't really answer the original question. So let me address why, in my opinion, murder as a whole is morally wrong on a philosophical level. And it is simple. Murdering somebody for your pleasure because you want to causes severe suffering. Humans generally do not like to suffer. Lady Iris is really objectifying people here as if they are just pawns that, you know, that if she wanted to, she could just use however she wants. She, I think, is lacking the understanding that it is a whole person that you would be hurting, who has dreams, aspirations, they have goals, they have a bucket list, they want to visit the Eiffel Tower someday, they have a whole personality, they have a family, they have parents, they might have children, they might have grandchildren, they have siblings, cousins, friends, loved ones, all these people who care about them, where when you take their life for your own selfish reasons, that suffering is not only going to be on that person, but it's going to ripple out into a giant group of people that are affected by that death. All their loved ones now have to deal with not only the grief, but the incredible trauma of learning that their loved one not only passed away, but passed away because you had a sadistic urge, as you put it. And then last, the reason that it is morally wrong is because, generally speaking, you would not want to be M-worded at somebody else's hands. Most serial killers, just because they love ending other people, they would protect themselves if somebody tried to M-word them back. If somebody tried to do that, they would defend themselves. But regardless, if you did not want to be M-worded yourself, then it is expected to apply that same courtesy and nicety to someone else. Now, that is from a non-religious point of view and my moral compass. There is a lot of religious nuance to this. For example, Christians or people that believe in a traditional man god in the sky or in heaven are going to have a very different kind of take on this. And I actually came across this really interesting clip that made me think very hard.
Forget you asked what? Why murder is wrong?
Yeah. Do you say murder is wrong because it's wrong? Or is it wrong because you say it's wrong?
Well, okay, what's the difference?
Well, if murder is wrong whether or not God says it's wrong, then morality doesn't require God. But if murder is wrong just because God says it's wrong, then morality is arbitrary. So, which is it?
Arbitrary.
But anyway, regardless of the actual argument, what disturbs me most about this particular post is that it feels like she's trying to justify her dark fantasies. It's like she's looking for just one person to say, oh yeah, no, M-word, it's not actually morally wrong, it's fine. It's like she wants somebody to give her a permission slip to go off and act on these thoughts that she's having, which is just very, very, very unsettling. It's like you're posting it online hoping that somebody will agree with you, not actually because you want to know what people's opinions are or want anyone to change your mind. Okay, soon after that post, finally, we're going to move on here. There was another post that said, if there were undeniable proof that a very pleasant afterlife existed for all human beings, would it still be frowned upon to K-word innocent people? See what I mean? It's like she keeps posting the same type of thing over and over, wanting somebody to agree with her, and I'm sure some people did, probably privately, and messaged her, because there are people with these thoughts out there, but like, it's like she's posting it over and over until somebody says, yeah, go ahead. Someone on this post, though, said, you actually believe that heaven's existence would make M-word okay? You sound insane. And Lady Iris replied, how is that insane? And they say, you've been told by other people in this thread already. If you seriously still think it'd be okay, you need help. And Lady Iris replies, I'm not stupid. I understand what people are trying to say and that we should all have control over our own lives. We should not take that choice away from another person. However, I still don't think you can truly call it evil when the result is someone getting a happier existence in the end. Okay, so again, I just wanted to point out this particular post mostly because I wanted to rebuttal her weird arguments and how the average person would think. The problem with her argument here is, like, again, I understand where she's coming from. Like, if it was guaranteed that it would be better than here, why is that still bad? But the problem with this argument, which should be obvious, is that it's hypothetical, that it's completely hypothetical, and we will never, ever, ever, one of the few things humans will never be able to prove is that there is a heaven and a hell. We can never scientifically, definitively prove that. There will always be doubt. Me personally, I don't believe in a Christian God. I do not believe that there is heaven or hell. Other people fully believe that it's real. So what is the point of asking this question? The argument's moot. You will never, ever, ever be in the position where you're about to end somebody's life and you know for a fact that they will go to heaven. There's no situation on this earth that you will be able to know that for sure. Okay, so now I want to address the other elephant in the room. Is this just a fetish? For that, I want to address this post. So she says, what is your opinion on the morality of enjoying an innocent person's death? Again, another variation of the same question she's asked a million times. As we go through these posts, and she seems to ask a similar question over and over, it does beg the question, is this something that is secretly just getting her off? Like, she has no plans on actually acting on any of these things, but she is getting her rocks off, for lack of a better phrase, by seeing people respond to her making these outlandish questions. And shock is a fetish. Non-consensually sharing shocking information, whether it be sexual or not, is a thing for some people. They like the reaction they get from non-consensually telling you something you didn't want to know. To prove my point, let's read some of the comments. So the top comment, someone has obviously looked through Lady Iris's post history, says, OP, I'm starting to detect a disturbing trend. Lady Iris replies, it's my fetish. Okay, so mystery solved, right? But wrong. The conversation continued after that. Yeah, I've seen you post about it before. I'm curious as to why you don't take it somewhere like FetLife. And if you don't know, FetLife is a website where like-minded people, especially the BDSM community, can go and talk with each other. It's another kind of message board thing, is my understanding. So somewhere like FetLife where you'd have a more receptive audience. Not to say that FetLife has more wannabe M-worders, but I think they'd have more people open to the idea of fantasizing about it. Basically, this person is asking, why are you using unsuspecting Reddit people to engage in your fetish non-consensually? That's not cool. Basically what they're saying. Lady Iris replies, I've tried sites like FetLife, but most people are into the sexual aspect of these fantasies and want it to be consensual, implying that she does not. These thoughts do turn me on, but there is nothing, quote, sexual about them, at least not in a way that makes me want to flirt with others about it. Commenter says, I guess that makes sense. It just seems creepy and annoying to push your fetish on Ask Reddit, especially when you make topic after topic with mostly negative responses. I get that fantasy doesn't equal reality, but it's not the healthiest fascination to dwell on. 10 out of 10 comment, totally agree. Lady Iris said, I like getting all responses, they be positive or negative. I found some interesting people to talk to in private message from these topics. I also enjoy debate and hearing opposing views, so I like the large sub like Ask Reddit. I figure that people can ignore my posts if they really can't stand them. No. That's an excuse. That's a justification. That's a minimalization of her posts. That is, yeah, let's talk about consent for a second. I'm not going to gripe on this because most of you all know and understand this concept because it's not a difficult concept to grasp. But what she is doing is unethical, in my opinion. Let's say she has no intention of ever acting out on these thoughts. She's never actually been a violent person, but it is just her fetish to think about this stuff. And specifically, it's her fetish to shock other people with her dark thoughts. It's not that she actually wants to do them. She likes the reaction she's getting out of people. That is unethical. That's not okay. Is it illegal? Probably not. But it's a really just cruel, effed up thing to do. It is not okay to push your fetish on somebody else when without their consent. Also similar to, for example, sending a picture of your downstairs area to somebody on a dating app or to somebody over text when they did not explicitly ask for it. Now, obviously, that's not the most jarring thing about this whole thread. The most jarring thing is that she is admitting that there is some sort of sexual aspect to this. But she herself admitted she does not want it to be consensual, and she doesn't want to role play. She doesn't want to just find a BDSM partner and role play these scenarios. She has this thing where it is specifically the violent acts that do give her sexual gratification, but the non-consensualness, the harming of an innocent person, as she said many times before, is what gratifies her. The specifically not being a willing participant is part of it, which again, I would just like to remind you that that is what a lot of misogynistic serial killers, that is a lot of what their mentality is that they found out that through their own relationship that they cannot be completely satisfied with consensual acts. And so they escalate into doing non-consensual things. And those non-consensual things are what finally they realize gets them off. And it just goes worse and worse from there. My personal opinion at this point is that this person behind this account likely has some sort of personality disorder that is preventing them from feeling empathy for others, which we will also talk about in a minute. But at this point, we're like, okay, girl, you need help. You need therapy, possibly medication. You need some serious psychological help. And I do understand that it's not possible for a lot of people to get help, and that's wrong, and they should, but it still doesn't mean that that makes you going off to do these things okay. Now, on the topic of empathy, I want to talk about another post of hers, and this one says, serious. Why do people describe empathy as an automatic emotional response rather than a cognitive, intellectual understanding of another person's position? So in this post, we have Lady Iris pretending like she knows what empathy is. The irony is that she literally doesn't, and doesn't see how her responses, her description of what empathy is, proves that she doesn't know what it is. I promise I'm not going to diagnose anybody in this video as a sociopath or a psychopath, or as the proper term for those would be antisocial personality disorder, or ASPD is the proper, more respectful diagnosis. I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but even if I was, this is not my patient. So it is not my place to diagnose her with anything. And that's a good reminder that nobody should be diagnosing anybody on the internet that they don't know and that they don't actually care for, like the, narcissism and how that's thrown around way too much without anybody actually being diagnosed. Anyway, that disclaimer out of the way, I'm going to read you some of this post and then give you my thoughts. So somebody said, I'm pretty sure psychopaths have a cognitive intellectual understanding of another person's position, except they have no emotional response to go along with it. It's considered an automatic emotional response because watching someone else in pain causes you pain, or at least discomfort at their pain. Lady Iris says, watching someone in pain does not cause you pain. I'm sorry, it's not funny. I'm laughing a little because it's weird, not haha. But the fact that she just continually tells on herself, and the irony of her not realizing that she's telling on herself, watching someone in pain does not cause you pain. That's because she doesn't experience pain when she watches someone else in pain. Other people that do not have any concerning mental health diagnosis or issues do feel pain and feel emotional distress when they see somebody else in pain. So somebody replied, it does on a certain level. They are called mirrored neurons. Just the action of watching someone in pain triggers the neurons in your brain that are associated with that pain. And she said, I don't think that's true for everyone. Yeah, no shit. You're proving that perfectly. People react to things differently. I've never felt feelings associated with pain from seeing someone in pain. I can understand why they are hurting, but there's no emotional reaction. And I have talked to others about this, and many agree that they feel the same way that I do. You can understand that it hurts to scrape your knee, but it does not bring you discomfort. Somebody else says, but the phrase empathy means an emotional response, not a thought. Literally, the ability to understand and share feelings with another. She continues to argue, but you can understand them without sharing them. You can intellectually think, wow, she lost her husband. That sucks. That must hurt. I would hate to lose my husband, but not feel sad, upset, or emotional in any way. That's a thought process that allows you to understand others, but you will never feel what they feel. Somebody else replies, you're arguing semantics. Empathy, the word, means an emotional response. Just because you understand where that person is coming from doesn't mean you have empathy. Exactly. exactly. Thank you to this person. Then I and many other people lack empathy. You think? Seems like a silly thing since understanding it is basically the same thing. It's not, though. That is not what empathy is. Now, I also want to be very careful that I'm not demonizing people who lack empathy. There's a lot of different brain chemistry things, we'll just say, that can cause a lowered sense of empathy, or that can cause people not to understand empathy in the same way. And I want to be clear that that does not make somebody an inherently bad person. You cannot help how your brain is structured. However, I will say, recognizing a lack of empathy in yourself and then not putting effort into either learning empathy, which you can do with therapy and help, or at least not causing harm then because you recognize that you lack empathy, that is still your responsibility to do in order to maintain relationships and generally have a fulfilling life. She's missing the part where having empathy is not only understanding another person's position, understanding how you would feel in that position, and therefore treating them with the compassion that you would expect being in that position. For example, with her M-wordy thoughts, recognizing, having empathy for somebody and therefore not harming or K-wording them is because you see if you were in their position, you would feel scared, you would feel traumatized, you would feel hurt, you would feel unbelievable, unadulterated fear, literally peeing your pants in fear because you feel like you're about to lose your life at the hands of another person. That is emotion, and she seems to be missing that. You can look at somebody and understand, wow, you must be really scared right now. But the difference is that it feels like Lady Iris likes that feeling. She likes looking at somebody being scared. She understands other people's emotions, but she does not actually feel anything about other people's emotions. Now, getting back on my mental health pedestal a little bit, and just a reminder that I'm not a therapist or a medical professional, so I'm not like an expert in this or whatever, but I do want to remind everybody that sociopathy, psychopathy are extremely demonized. And again, it's really called ASPD, antisocial personality disorder, but I'm referring to it as sociopath mostly because that's what most people, they understand that word. But people with ASPD can, I promise, they can live fulfilling, normal, nonviolent lives. Many people do not believe that. Many people think that no matter what, they are just inherently evil people. And that's just not the case. You pass by somebody with ASPD all the time, and they're just very good at masking it. There's more people, probably people that you know and they've never told you, that actually have ASPD. You would never know it because they've done the work to still be a good member of society. We often think that if you're a sociopath, that's it. You're a murderer. You're willing to murder, or you are a murderer. And that's also not true. Sociopaths can live good lives. They can get careers. They can get married. They can have children if they want to and be good parents. But they had the support to help them through their diagnosis, and they treated their diagnosis just like we would treat any other mental health disorder. Contrary to popular belief, if you have a good support system and you do have the resources, which obviously there's a privilege discussion to have that's completely, I'm not going to get into today, but there are people that were diagnosed with ASPD at a young age, and so they were able to start therapy early. And if you have a good, loving parent and support system and people to tell you why you should not do the things that you might be compelled to do, you can live a good life. They are not the monsters that society makes them out to be, or that TV shows and movies make them out to be. But it obviously would take a ton of therapy, mental health help, possibly medication. So to go back to Lady Iris, that's actually fair. Like, she's actually, if you look at it that way, she is doing something that she is realizing this stuff in her, right? She is realizing that she's having very disturbing thoughts and very disturbing desires. And it's not, if she hasn't done anything already, although allegedly one of her other accounts claimed that she did K-word a cat. So allegedly, if that really happened, she's not completely innocent in not doing harm yet. But if she can look at this and say, hey, this is not how I want to live my life. I don't want to end up in prison. You know, that would be the main motivator. I don't want to end up in prison for the rest of my life. I want to have relationships. Then it's not too late to go and do the work and figure this out. Okay, moving on. The last post that she posted like 9 years ago was January 5th, 2016. And this was her last post on this account. And I think she had one after this that came a few years later. But again, I could not find it. Doesn't really matter, like I said. But she said, quote, which location would you choose if you were going to commit a mass shooting? That's what she left us with. Other than the Allegretta account, she definitely had another account later called Porcelain Peonies. And without looking at the specific posts, the other stuff that I read from her is kind of the sentiment that I already talked about, is that she knows that she has these urges, but she doesn't want to spend her life in prison, which is why she's not acting on them. And she claims that she will never act on them. But like we said, if these things are left untreated, very, very often they escalate, because she has claimed in other comments that talking about it and getting answers like this from people on Reddit is what feeds her fetish. So she says she gets satisfied by talking about it and getting other people to talk about it, or like we talked about early, non-consensually shocking people with her bizarre thoughts. But my major concern with that is that if this is left untreated, we do see escalation typically, like in serial killers, because you start to go against the grain, you start to act on these thoughts, like maybe she did hurt an animal at one point, or she's getting detailed responses from people on Reddit, but pretty soon you become desensitized to the things that used to help you satisfy the urges. And as you become desensitized, you often have to go on to something just a little bit more extreme, a little bit worse than what you were doing before. Perhaps that could look like manipulating somebody in her life, just causing destruction, not physical destruction, but emotional destruction, things that she knows she can get away with. And it could eventually escalate, again, like I said, if it's left untreated and without the help of professionals, doctors and therapists. Okay, so now let's address the elephant in the room finally. Is this possible that she's just a troll? Maybe she's just a very dedicated troll and none of this is true. There is one post talking about Lady Iris where somebody said the following: Iris was a fairly skilled shit stirrer. I can't definitely state that she was a troll. A troll is usually making shit up for attention or laughs, just effing with people. Iris may or may not have done any of the things she talked about, but calling her a nutcase is also not accurate. She was consistent, lucid, and usually coherent. It wasn't like she was just drooling and fetishizing bad acts. As far as I know, her post history isn't accessible as the account she used got banned. I rather wish that they were accessible just for the ability to answer stuff like this with real examples. Iris wrote like someone trying to act edgy rather than actually someone that is edgy, if you see the difference. There was this veneer of performance most of the time that felt slightly artificial. I can't provide examples because the accounts are gone, but there was a pattern that led me to believe that most of what she said was truthy, but not usually true. Like saying that you have violent thoughts is true. This is a random example, but if you say that you have thoughts about beating someone and your thoughts are really just about punching them once, it's true, but not accurate. And she also usually said things in a way that read like she had practiced the phrasing multiple times, if only in her head. What's funny to me is that she was usually entertaining. I tend not to have the patience for performance art on Reddit, the Andy Kaufman type thing where the joke is in the absurdity of it. I like it in most ways, but it annoys me on Reddit. Since that's where I place the majority of her more extreme claims, I would normally react poorly and just block someone doing it. Anyway, those days are long gone. Reddit just isn't the kind of place for that kind of niche insanity anymore. The OP said, have you ever spoken with Lady Iris? You seem to have been kind of close. This person said, we weren't close. I just enjoyed her style, but the sub was smaller back then, so it was a bit small townish, I guess. You sort of knew the usual suspects. So I don't think that that's any sort of definitive proof that she's a troll. That comment just read from somebody who didn't know her at all and was just assessing that on their own opinions based on being there at the time. I am personally of the opinion that this is real, or that this person really was having those thoughts. And you know me, I am the debunker. I debunk as much as possible. I'm very anti-conspiracy, and usually when everybody else is freaking out about something, I am the one who's like, it's probably fake. I am of the opinion that almost everything on the internet that is trying to shock or creep somebody out is often fake. However, just because a lot of it is fake does not mean that all of it's fake. I just get the vibe. It's just an instinct. I have no definitive proof. It's speculation. So don't at me. I'm not saying that I know for sure and nobody else does. It's just my instincts. It's my instincts and my experience looking into so many internet mysteries now and making hundreds of videos on dark things like that, like this. It's just how specific she is that really does not give me the vibe of this being a troll or like performance art. She really does sound like somebody who in one way or another lacks empathy, and just the way that she didn't understand that the way she was describing empathy being wrong, and her arguing that, no, that is empathy, even though it's not, like her telling on herself like that. I don't know. And then the other part to me is just that there's so many posts. If this was a troll, she was the most dedicated troll of all time, because she had like at least 3 different accounts posting many, many, many posts. There's dozens of posts on just this one, and was posting almost every single day variations of these questions and interacting with the community. And so it just feels like typically trolls or somebody who's faking this or trying to scare people are going to give up pretty quick. They're going to get bored of the shtick and they're going to just go away. So I don't know. It just seems very, very well researched if that is the case, because she is saying things that sound very much like what somebody who maybe had something not normal about their brain would say. And it's just the arguments for the pro-violence side. Like, why would you risk your account getting flagged by the FBI or by the police for being, if you were a troll? I don't know. They probably used a VPN and all that, but yeah, I don't know. How authentic and persistent these posted sounds, how well they seem to understand the psychology of being somebody like this, and for just how many posts merely there were over years, is why I do personally think that this is real. If you guys want to go on the journey with me of exploring the kink/fetish iceberg, that is an iceberg that I am working on for my Patreons, and I cannot post those on YouTube publicly. If you're interested in that, you have to join the mid-tier or above on my Patreon, and I just put out part 3. So there's part 1, 2, and 3 so far in that iceberg. It's a very long iceberg. So if you're interested in that, that'll be linked down below. The merch is also always for sale if you want a future ghost, future poltergeist, peeking ghost, or the camping cryptids. That's always available. Thank you again to Aura for sponsoring today's video. And yeah, that's going to be it for today. Thank you guys for all the patrons on the screen right now. Seriously, thank you all so much. I appreciate you. Shout out to our newest top tier patrons, which is Jordan Gates. Thank you so much for joining the alien tier, as well as Kai Gunter. Thank you so much. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, bye.